As Yixian looks back, he found the princess in a sword clash with another girl. The princess sternly addressed the girl as Beichin, expressing her disbelief and indignation at the audacity of the attack on them. In response to the princess's confrontation, Beichin explained that everyone present was searching for treasure, and naturally, eliminating a competitor would improve her own chances. Continuing her attack, Beichin asserts her allegiance to the Kangmu Academy, emphasizing that she would only follow their commands. Amidst the ongoing skirmish, the princess successfully evaded an attack, prompting Yixian to catch her. Yixian, concerned for the princess's well-being, asked if she was unharmed. The princess reassured Yixian, stating that she was fine, and then issued an order. She urged him to stop Beichin and prevent her from surpassing them in their pursuit of the treasure. Agreeing to the princess's directive, Yixian summoned his sword, prepared to take action. Witnessing Yixian approaching her with determination, Beichin proclaimed that she would show no mercy to anyone obstructing her path. In response, Yixian boldly challenged Beichin, telling her to proceed with her threats as she believed she was capable. Their confrontation was abruptly interrupted as the princess cautioned Yixian, urgently advising him to move away. She alerted him that someone had breached the protective sword light barrier. As the warning given by the princess proved accurate, the protective sword light wall suddenly exploded, prompting the trio to hastily evacuate from the area. Once the smoke cleared, the trio exchanged puzzled glances, questioning each other about the unexpected event that had just unfolded. Out of nowhere, a mysterious voice echoed, inviting someone to enter and claiming to have been awaiting the person's arrival. In response to these words, the sword held by Yixian began to emit a radiant glow, capturing Yixian's attention. Following this occurrence, the sword seemingly moved of its own accord, as if drawn towards something. Observing this, Yixian expressed confusion and sought to understand the situation. Concerned by Yixian's predicament, the princess scrutinized him and inquired about his actions. Yixian replied, explaining that he was not in control of his own body, as if something else was dictating his movements. Acknowledging Yixian's plight, the princess assured Beichin that she would address her later, prioritizing her focus on Yixian's peculiar situation. In response, Beichin retorted with a sense of determination, expressing her refusal to let the princess take anything away while she was present. Upon entering the entrance, Yixian and the girls found themselves momentarily taken aback by the sight of numerous statues surrounding the area. Observing the multitude of statues, the princess voiced her curiosity, questioning the reason behind their presence. Beichin responded, explaining that they were likely in the Sword Palace. Unimpressed with Beichin's input, the princess dismissed her response. Beichin, in return, insultingly referred to the princess as a crazy person. As they continued to observe the statues, Yixian noticed that they all wielded swords identical to his own, known as the Lingxiao sword. Suddenly, a mysterious woman dressed in white emerged and directed her attention towards Yixian, proclaiming that he had finally arrived after all these years. Startled by her sudden appearance, the trio collectively asked the woman who she was. In response to their question, the woman turned her face towards the group, revealing herself to them. As Yixian laid eyes upon her, he couldn't help but be captivated by her beauty. Yixian respectfully addressed the woman, referring to her as senior and inquiring if she knew him. Disappointingly, the woman replied that he was not the person she had been seeking, conveying a sense of regret in her words. The female pointed towards an entrance and informed the group that if they were seeking treasure, they could proceed to the room located at the back of the hall, where some items left behind by someone could be found. Upon noticing the entrance to the room, the princess swiftly grasped Yixian's arm, urging him to follow her. However, Yixian remained unmoved, refusing to go along with the princess. Seizing the opportunity, Beichin taunted the princess, waving at her while making her way towards the room, and sarcastically remarking that she should enjoy her time with her young man. She emphasized that everything in the room belonged to the Kangmu Academy. Responding with anger, the princess firmly warned Beichin not to even consider claiming the treasure for herself. Following this exchange, the princess, still fuming, urged Yixian to take action. She questioned why he was standing still, emphasizing the importance of finding the treasure before Beichin could seize all the valuable items. Noticing Yixian's lack of movement, the princess inquired about his intentions, questioning whether he had lost interest in finding the treasure. With his attention fixed on the female, Yixian responded to her, expressing his desire to ask her something and suggesting that she should proceed ahead. Upon hearing Yixian's words, the princess, filled with anger, left the area, muttering to herself about Yixian's inability to divert his gaze from the attractive woman. Determined to confront Beiqin, the princess vowed to stop her. Turning his focus back to the female, Yixian presented his sword and inquired about her connection to it. He speculated that the recent fluctuations in the Lingxiao sword were possibly related to her. Yixian asked if the female was familiar with the sword. Examining the sword, the female expressed concern, noting that the essence of the sword had dissipated, and only a trace of spirit remained. Realizing the implications of her words, the female shed tears and asked if the original owner of the sword had already passed away. Observing the female's emotional reaction, Yixian asked if she knew the person who owned the sword. Transporting the narrative to the past, the female explained that she had created the Lingxiao sword and had bestowed it upon the sword's previous owner. Before departing, the owner of the Lingxiao sword had promised the female that once he achieved success in his cultivation, he would marry her and establish a family together. The female affirmed her commitment, assuring him that she would patiently wait for him. Continuing her explanation, the female revealed that the sword's owner had instructed her to wait at the location they were in, promising that he would return for her. However, despite the passage of many years, he never came back. Returning to the present, the female inquired if Yixian was a disciple of the sword owner. Yixian replied, stating that it was somewhat the case. With a melancholic smile, the female explained that although she had never officially married the sword owner, in her heart, she considered herself his wife. Continuing the conversation, the female asked if Yixian would like to address her as his master. Yixian looked at her with a sorrowful expression, but quickly bowed to the female and firmly declared her as his master. Moved by his gesture, the female burst into tears of happiness, expressing her gratitude towards Yixian. In a direct manner, the female presented Yixian with a sword named Lingyu, which was a twin sword to Lingxiao. She explained that when the two swords were combined, their power would increase with a limit of up to the heavenly sword, which is above the true sword. The female expressed her intention to gift the sword to Yixian and emphasized that he should nurture the sword and cultivate a strong bond with it. She entrusted him with the responsibility of determining how far the sword could grow in the future. Surprised by the gesture, Yixian questioned whether the sword was truly meant for him. The female swiftly confirmed that it was indeed intended for him. Grasping the sword in his hand, Yixian expressed his gratitude towards the female, addressing her as his master. However, as Yixian focused his attention on his master, he realized that her presence was already fading away. In her parting words, she explained that the two swords had been reunited, and it was time for her to seek out the person she longed for. Confused and concerned, Yixian inquired about his master's condition, desperately calling out to her. Responding to his question, his master explained to him that despite not being able to spend the best time of her life with the person she loves the most, they would not be separated this time. As Yixian sadly watched his master vanish, he was suddenly seized by the princess, who urgently urged him to run. While being dragged away by the princess, Yixian informed her that his master is already gone. In response, the princess told him that they couldn't afford to dwell on their sadness, emphasizing the need to escape to ensure their own survival. Hot on her heels, Beiqin angrily pursued them, accusing the princess of being shameless and demanding the return of the book containing top-grade martial arts skills. As Beiqin continued to chase them, the princess further provoked her by teasing and taunting her, inviting her to catch her if she dared and calling her names. Beiqin, visibly furious, responded with an even stronger threat, vowing to cut the princess into numerous pieces. Observing the intense situation between the two women, Yixian could only comment on their behavior as they continued running. After a short while, Yixian proposed the idea of sitting down and having a conversation. He expressed his willingness to engage in dialogue with them. Beiqin, still catching her breath, replied to Yixian, suggesting that he might have a problem with his brain. Agreeing with Beiqin's statement, the princess concurred with her assessment of Yixian's mental state. Suddenly, the princess noticed an incoming attack directed towards them. Emerging from the smoke was the prince of the Ning country, accompanied by his followers. The prince addressed the ninth princess, complimenting her beauty and suggesting that he might spare her if she handed over the book of martial arts skills. Reacting swiftly, the princess gripped her sword and retorted, questioning the prince's audacity to attempt taking the book from her. The princess unleashed a chi slash towards the prince and his lackeys, vehemently expressing her defiance, and stating that it was nothing more than a dream for them to acquire the book. After analyzing the princess's attack, the prince praised her exceptional skills and recognized her as a rare talent. However, as he prepared to launch his own attack, he belittled her abilities, considering them to be mere tricks in his presence. As their energies clashed, the princess sustained injuries and coughed up blood during the process. Meanwhile, taking advantage of the situation, the prince positioned himself in the air, preparing to strike the princess. Noticing the prince's imminent attack, Yi Xian urgently cautioned the princess to be cautious. Following up his warning, Yi Xian charges his fist with qi and charged towards the prince. With a successful punch to the prince's stomach, he disrupted the attack, causing the prince to fall to the ground. As they approached the fallen prince, the prince questioned them for launching a surprise attack on him. He then warned them that killing him would result in a war between their two countries. In a nonchalant manner, the princess responded, expressing skepticism about the prince's warning. She proceeded to kick him in the head, commenting that his country was incapable of starting a war. Upon witnessing the Ning prince's death, one of the Ning prince's companions expressed outrage at the princess for daring to kill their highness. Reacting to the situation, the girl emitted an aura of qi, surrounding herself with its power as she advanced toward Yi Xian and the princess. Quickly assessing the dangerous situation, Yi Xian devised a plan to divert the girl's attention. He instructed Bei Chen to confront and defeat her companion. As the girl observed Bei Chen engaging in combat with her companion, Bei Chen questioned him about his motives, wondering why he was fighting her when the princess possessed the martial arts skill they sought. The guy responded to Bei Chen, stating that he was simply following the Ning prince's orders to fight. Frustrated by the response, Bei Chen exclaimed in annoyance. Returning her focus to Yi Xian and the princess, the girl realized that she had been deceived. In her anger, she declared her intent to make them suffer a dreadful death, vowing vengeance for the deception. Later on, inside a cottage, the princess found a seat on a stack of hay, looking like a snack. She expressed her frustration and anger towards the prince, referring to him with derogatory language and expressing that his demise was still a blessing, considering the injuries he had caused her. Observing her state, Yi Xian questioned her actions, wondering why she would risk her life for an upper-grade martial arts book and if it was truly worth it. The princess responded emphatically, stating that even if she had to endure suffering 100 times over, she would not hesitate to do so. She asked Yi Xian if he believed it was worth it. Curious, Yi Xian asked her about the purpose behind her actions. The princess proceeded to explain the current situation faced by the country of Jiang. She described the presence of numerous influential families within Jiang, each focused on their own interests rather than the welfare of the country. She mentioned the two powerful entities, the Drunken Immortal House and the Kangmu Academy, which held significant sway in the Jiang country. These organizations recruited many talented individuals for their own purposes, but she questioned how many of them were truly willing to fight for the country's sake. The princess emphasized that the Drunken Immortal House controlled the economic aspects of the Jiang country, exerting monopolistic control over almost every industry. This, in turn, resulted in a perpetual state of debt for the country's treasury. The princess gazed at the book in front of her with an expression of hope on her face. She revealed that she commanded tens of thousands of soldiers who hadn't received their wages for 2 months. The martial arts book is expected to be valued at 50 million gold coins, and if it were to be auctioned off, it could sustain the treasury for a period of 3 years. Questioning the worth of her actions, the princess turned to Yi Xian for his opinion. Impressed by her consideration towards her country, Yi Xian blushed slightly and reassured her that it was indeed worth it. In his inner thoughts, he acknowledged the princess's strong commitment to her country and understood why An Langshu held her in such high regard as a precious friend. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence, suggesting that they couldn't escape far and proposing to check the bamboo house. Another voice chimed in, warning that they had agreed to work together, and any attempt to deceive them would result in severe consequences. Hearing this, Yi Xian recognized the voices as belonging to Bei Chen and the 2 individuals from the Ning country. The princess voiced her disdain towards Bei Chen, referring to her as a troublesome person. Yi Xian then made a decision, stating that he would divert their attention while instructing the princess to seize an opportunity to escape. The princess objected, reminding Yi Xian that she had promised to take care of him, and he wouldn't stand a chance against the three of them. Yi Xian opened the door, resolute in his decision, and told the princess that she had already taken care of him enough. As Yi Xian closed the door, the princess gazed at it momentarily, remarking with teary eyes that he was talking as if they wouldn't see each other anymore and mentioning that the thing entrusted to her had not been handed to him yet. Meanwhile, under the light of the moon, the girl from Ning shouted at Bei Qin, urging her to move faster. Bei Qin responded by asking if she was now in a hurry, pointing out that if she hadn't buried that idiot earlier, they wouldn't have lost track of them. They suddenly became aware of Yi Xian, who was holding a book and shouting with excitement. In response, Bei Qin readied her sword and made a remark, identifying him as that stupid kid with the martial art book in his hand. The girl from Ning made a suggestion, expressing the idea of going after him. Sensing the presence of the trio, Yi Xian smiled to himself and had a thought, acknowledging his success in luring them. Continuing with his plan, Yi Xian started running while thinking to himself that he needed to find a way to get rid of these people. As he continued to run, Yi Xian noticed a giant rock in his path. Afterward, Yi Xian decided to hide behind the rock, contemplating his thoughts. He realized that it seemed they hadn't been able to catch up with him. Just as he thought this, someone suddenly tapped his shoulder and addressed him as "Old brother." Yi Xian was startled and swiftly turned his attention toward the person, asking who it was. The person who approached him was a drunk individual, attempting to calm Yi Xian and explaining that he merely wanted to ask for directions. In response, Yi Xian questioned the drunk person, asking what he wanted to know, unable to ignore the strong smell of alcohol emanating from him. The drunk person replied, stating his query about the route to Lingjian Cave. Observing the drunk person, Yi Xian came up with an idea. Later on, the drunk person examined the map, expressing praise toward Yi Xian, acknowledging him as a good man. However, at that moment, the girl from Ning mistook the drunk person for Yi Xian and shouted that he was over there, suggesting they chase him. As the scene of the drunk person being chased unfolded, Yi Xian, the scheming individual, laughed at the sight, commending himself as a clever person. After fooling the trio, Yi Xian made the decision to search for the ninth princess. However, he was suddenly approached by an individual who asked him about the next line of the phrase, "The mantis catches the cicada," suggesting that he should know what it means. Yi Xian takes out his sword and stopped as he questions the person's identity. The guy, known as Wu Yunshan and the Marquis of the Ning, responded by saying that Yi Xian didn't need to know who he is, but should simply hand over the book of the martial arts skill. Receiving no response from Yi Xian, Yunshan further inquired if he wanted to fight. Yi Xian inquired if Yunshan would let him go if he handed over the book. Replying to him, Yunshan responded that it was not possible. Realizing the situation, Yi Xian commented that he had already anticipated this outcome. Without hesitation, Yi Xian directed a sword slash towards Yunshan, declaring that it was better to fight than to wait for death. Observing the attack, Yunshan dismissed it as a minor trick and effortlessly produced the chi from his hand, shielding himself from Yi Xian's attack. Recognizing Yunshan's strength, Yi Xian acknowledged his power. Fearing the danger, Yi Xian understood the gravity of the situation. After neutralizing Yi Xian's attack, Yunshan arrogantly challenged him, questioning what else he had and urging him to use his powerful skills without wasting his time. Yi Xian replied to him, calling him arrogant as he prepared to launch his attack. Yunshan responded by asking what it mattered. He easily evaded Yi Xian's attack and positioned himself behind him, commenting on his confidence in dealing with Yi Xian. Yunshan generated chi energy in his hand, causing Yi Xian to be sent crashing into a rock. Observing Yi Xian's miserable state, Yunshan remarked that he had a strong body and a sharp sword, acknowledging his talent in both swordsmanship and martial arts. He expressed regret that Yi Xian was born in Jiang. Yunshan proposed an offer, suggesting that Yi Xian return to Ning country with him and swear allegiance, promising to spare his life. With his remaining strength, Yi Xian made a sarcastic remark, saying that Yunshan seemed skilled at biting people and suggested that he become a guard dog in Jiang country instead. Yunshan, hearing this, expressed his anger and prepared to attack with a smile, stating that Yi Xian deserved to die. Suddenly, someone intervened by delivering a punch to Yunshan's face, disrupting his attack and sending him flying to the ground. Yi Xian watched this unfold with a confused expression and asked what had happened. Taking advantage of the situation, Yi Xian decided to seize the opportunity and escape, commenting that it was a great chance. Yunshan, struggling to regain his composure after being hit, questioned aloud, wondering who had delivered the punch to his face. He scanned the surroundings, urging anyone present to reveal themselves. Upon reaching the city gate, Yi Xian was swiftly approached by the princess and Langxiu, who ran towards him with concern evident on their faces. Surprised to see Langxiu, Yi Xian called out her name. Witnessing Yi Xian's weakened state, Langxiu rushed to his side, addressing him by name. As Langxiu supported Yi Xian, he inquired about her presence and why she was there. Langxiu explained that Xiaojiu had sent her a message about Yi Xian being in danger, prompting her to rush back. Apologizing for the trouble he had caused, Yi Xian expressed his remorse. The princess, upon reaching their location, responded sharply, questioning Yi Xian's remarks and calling him an idiot. She pointed out that he was the one injured and suggested they take him to the barracks, where medical workers were available. Agreeing with the princess, Langxiu responded with a quick affirmation. With their combined support, they helped Yi Xian as they made their way towards the barracks. During the journey, Langxiu encouraged Yi Xian to bear with the pain, assuring him that the barracks were not far away. Yi Xian, determined to demonstrate his resilience, replied that he could still bear the minor injury. However, the princess rebutted, accusing him of trying to appear strong while pointing out his pale and ghostly complexion. Observing this scene is the trio including Bei Qin. Bei Qin comments on the unfortunate situation, expressing her belief that it is a stroke of bad luck. Upon noticing their presence, the princess directed her attention towards them and insulted Bei Qin, referring to her as a ghost. Bei Qin replied, questioning whether they were attempting to deceive them since Yi Xian didn't really take the martial arts skill book to begin with. Preparing her sword, Bei Qin advised them to stop opposing the Kangmu Academy and hand over the book. The princess turned to Langxiu, seeking her opinion on the matter. Stepping forward to confront the trio, Langxiu declared that she had the book and challenged them to come and take it if they dared. Witnessing Langxiu's appearance, Bei Qin is taken aback and wonders why she is there, especially in the company of Yi Xian. Unaware of Langxiu's true identity, the two individuals from the Ning faction rush towards her. Concerned for their safety, Bei Qin urgently warns them not to approach Langxiu. Ignoring her warning, Langxiu effortlessly sends them flying to the ground, demonstrating her formidable skills. As Langxiu approached them, the girl from Ning pleaded for mercy beneath her feet. Inquiring about who had injured Yi Xian, Langxiu pointed her spear at Bei Qin and asked if it was her or all of them. Bei Qin hastily denied any involvement and insisted that she hadn't hurt Yi Xian at all. Responding with anger, Langxiu expressed her distrust, stating that she disliked people who lied. As Langxiu's spear grazed Bei Qin's neck, Bei Qin nervously maintained her innocence. Trembling in fear, Bei Qin was surprised when an elder suddenly appeared and pleaded with Langxiu to spare her. Bei Qin addressed the elder as her master, revealing him to be Mok Song, one of the 3 vice presidents of the Kangmu Academy. Respectfully bowing to Langxiu, Mok Song explained that the person who had injured Yi Xian was not from the Kangmu Academy but the Marquis of Ning, Wu Yunshan. He requested that Langxiu spare her disciple. Langxiu stared at the elder inquisitively, and he nervously suggested that she confirm with her friend, referring to Yi Xian. Langxiu asked Yi Xian if the elder's statement was true, and Yi Xian confirmed that Bei Qin was not responsible, and that it was indeed someone from Ning. He added further that Langxiu had a high opinion of them, suggesting that they are incapable of doing this to him. Agreeing with Yi Xian's comment, Langxiu proceeded to lower her spear, and the two individuals breathed a sigh of relief. As Langxiu moved to return to Yi Xian, she turned her back to Mok Song and warned him that if she discovered any collusion between the Kangmu Academy and the Ning country, he would face dire consequences. Nervously responding, Mok Song assured Langxiu that he had been loyal to the Jiang Kingdom from the beginning and had no ulterior motives. Finally, the trio resumes their way to the barracks. The next day, inside a tent, the princess observed the sleeping Yi Xian and expressed relief that his veins had not been damaged. She remarked that she would have felt guilty for the rest of her life if that had been the case. Placing a towel on Yi Xian's forehead, the princess assured Lang Shu not to worry too much, as the medicine she had given him, which was given to her by her father, was effective. Turning her attention to Lang Shu, the princess questioned her about being too kind to Yi Xian. Observing Yi Xian with a smile, Lang Shu replied that he was a worthy friend and that she hadn't met anyone like him in many years. The princess jokingly commented that he must be the first person to make miss and speak so highly of someone. Lang Shu replied with a smile, stating that the princess herself was the first. At that moment, the cloaked elder signaled that it was time to leave. Lang Shu acknowledged the elder's remark and said she knew. Curious, the princess asked why they didn't wait for Yi Xian to wake up before departing. Lang Shu instructs the princess to inform Yi Xian that he could come to the Middle Kingdom if he wished to find her in the future, as she would be waiting for him there. The princess reacts to Lang Shu's earlier statement, and asks why she wants Yi Xian to come to her. She playfully inquires if Lang Shu is intending to discuss life and ideals or love with Yi Xian. Lang Shu casually responds that both options are possible. Upon hearing this, the princess and the elder reacts in surprise to Lang Shu's declaration. Later, as Lang Shu and the elder are about to leave, the elder expresses concern to Lang Shu. He warns her that if she becomes too close to Yi Xian, powerful families who seek to establish alliances through marriage may cause trouble for him. Lang Shu confidently reassures the elder, stating that no one can harm Yi Xian in her presence. The elder reminds Lang Shu about the master's expectations and how he doesn't want her to become involved with someone like Yi Xian, whom he considers mediocre. Frustrated, the elder adds that it's ridiculous to talk about love with Yi Xian, as he believes the young man is unworthy of her. Lang Shu turns her attention to the elder and asserts that Yi Xian is not as simple as he thinks, and that there is nothing about him that is unworthy of her. She declares that anyone who tries to cause trouble for Yi Xian is tantamount to messing with her. The elder's concern is evident as he reacts to the lady's remark. Noticing the elder's reaction, Lang Shu addresses him. She reminds him that he has been following her for a long time and implies that he knows her temperament well. Lang Shu firmly expresses her disapproval, telling the elder not to speak negatively about her friend in the future. The elder reluctantly agrees, accepting her instruction, but privately reflects on the stubbornness of young people. Inside the tent, the princess surprises Yi Xian by presenting him with a golden crescent sword. Yi Xian expresses his admiration for the weapon and questions if the princess is sure she doesn't want to keep it. The princess insists that she wants to give it to him, urging him not to waste time discussing it further. Yi Xian, curious about her motives, suggests that she may have given him the sword out of sympathy for his injuries sustained while protecting her. Blushing and avoiding eye contact, the princess responds evasively, implying that he can interpret her actions however he likes. She adds that since he has touched the sword, she no longer desires it, even if it means her own death. Yi Xian expresses his gratitude while gazing at the sword. Dismissively, the princess brushes off his thanks and reveals her plan for them to visit the immortal drunken house. Yi Xian, puzzled, inquires about the establishment. The princess explains that there will be an auction that night featuring the Earth-rank martial arts technique. Yi Xian expresses surprise, as he had been unaware of the arrangements. While sighing at his question, the princess hands Yi Xian his clothes and informs him that he has been sleeping for 3 days. She urges him to dress and eat before they attend the auction. Yi Xian, considering the potential threats surrounding the coveted book of martial arts, suggests that the princess ask Lang Shu to accompany her for protection. He believes that with Lang Shu by her side, nobody would dare to touch her belongings. However, the princess explains that Lang Shu has other obligations and returns solely to assist Yi Xian. She emphasizes that Lang Shu has already sacrificed a significant amount of time, so she doesn't want to burden her further. Changing the topic, the princess indirectly hints at Lang Shu's location by mentioning that she plans to invite her for a meal and drinks in the future when she visits the Middle Kingdom. Later on, at the Drunken Immortal branch in the Two Worlds City, a seductive woman named Su Qing introduces herself as the steward of the establishment and the host of the auction. Su Qing informs the guests that only 3 items will be up for auction that night. Despite that, she assures them that the offerings will not disappoint. After Su Qing concludes her announcement, Yi Xian turns to the princess and asks her about the price of the Book of Earth-grade martial arts. The princess confidently reveals that it is priced at 50 million gold coins, with no room for negotiation. However, a disruptive individual chimes in, making a remark that she would only give her 1 gold coin at most. The princess confronts the mysterious cloaked woman, expressing her annoyance at her remark. Receiving no response from the woman, the princess grows increasingly frustrated and decides to approach her directly, implying that the woman cannot afford the item and thus shouldn't criticize it. Yi Xian intervenes, understanding the potential consequences of causing a scene at the auction, and advises the princess against acting impulsively.